So I kind of went through life thinking nothing bad was ever going to happen to me. That happened to other people and other people's families until it didn't. And unfortunately, I lost my dad when my son was only 2 years old. He died of cancer when he was 57. And in less than 2 years later, my youngest sister was brutally murdered in her home. She was a school teacher. And that really was a wake up call as to bad things can happen to good people.
Hi, everyone. Welcome to Second Half Chronicles podcast. I'm your host, Karami Olson. I have such a lovely guest on today, Debbie McCulloch. And Debbie and I connected because she has a podcast and it's called Older and Bolder. Let me click on this. So here's what Debbie, with her podcast, she showcases women who are fearless, fabulous, and 50 plus. And I absolutely connected with her. I thought this was wonderful and I couldn't wait to interview her. She shares about some loss that she has in her life and how she's able to kind of move forward with that and see gratitude in living on. And she is fearless herself, taking on this amazing podcast project and all these other skills that she works on later in life. I just fell in love. Anyway, I look forward to presenting Debbie McCulloch. Hi, everybody. Welcome to Second Half Chronicles. My name is Karami Olson. I'm your host, and I have Debbie McCulloch here. And we are so excited to get into a conversation with Debbie. She's been gracious to meet with me and talk with me on my podcast today. And she has her own podcast. That's how we found each other. And our ideals for these podcasts kind of aligned. And so we kind of just collided and it's been wonderful. So hi, Debbie.
Hi, Karami. And thank you so much for having me on your podcast. I'm very excited to share this conversation with you today.
Oh, good. Good. Well, why don't we just start off and look forward to going into kind of your project and what you're doing, but we'll kind of save that for a little bit later. But why don't we start off? Why don't you introduce yourself? Just tell us a little bit about yourself here.
Okay. My name is Debbie McCulloch, like you said, and I live in small town, Rosetown, Saskatchewan, Canada. And I just shared with you, Karami, that even though it's April, we did get a skiff of snow last night. So we get cold winters and hot summers. But I am a retired pharmacist. I worked as a community pharmacist for 40 years and then decided what I was going to do during my retirement years. Did some traveling. I do lots of volunteering, but unfortunately I became a widow, just about 2 years ago when my husband became ill. And one of my projects for retirement has been starting a podcast, which I've really enjoyed. So, and that's how I got to connect with you.
Yes. Oh, so wonderful. Well, and so now you're on your own. Well, you've always probably been on your own, but you're on your own and, do you have children?
I do. I have 3 grown children and they are, my son is in his 40s and I have 2 daughters and they're in their 30s. And I have 2 awesome grandsons who are aged just about 10. The oldest grandson will turn 10 this month and the youngest one is 7. So yeah, that's my family and I'm very fortunate to have them.
And you're able to spend time, I think I read a little bit about you spend some time with your grandkids. They're close by.
Fairly close. They live an hour and a little bit away, which doesn't seem very far away in Saskatchewan. We're used to driving long distances and I get to see them lots. I follow them in their hockey. They love their hockey. They love ball in the summer and we do get together lots.
I love that. The reason I ask is because I just feel like people who do have grandchildren, that is a way that they kind of spend a lot of their time in their second half. And so, um, anyway, just kind of asking just a little bit
Yeah,
about that.
grandkids are a great spice to life. So they are absolutely delightful, and I really enjoy spending time with them.
Nice. Okay, well, let's talk a little bit about, well, maybe you can share a little bit about your first half. So maybe I'd like you to share some takeaways from your first half. You can kind of talk a little bit about your first half, whatever you feel like. So any takeaways or any influences in your first half? I like to, um, have people that kind of deem themselves in their second half share influences or takeaways, because maybe if I have someone younger listening, they can kind of be like, aha, maybe I should pay attention to that. So if you have any
Mhm.
influences in your first half that were positive or
Yeah,
any takeaways, yes.
I did. I did have a lot of positive influences. And then there were events, I guess, that happened that weren't so positive, and that all happened in my first half, if we're calling the first 40 years of our life our first half.
Whatever you want to call it. Yeah.
Yeah, so I was very fortunate. I was raised in a loving family on a farm. We were 20 some miles away from the nearest town. I went to a country school, and I had three siblings, one brother and two sisters. And what we lacked in money and finances was made up for in a strong sense of community and a loving family. And I was really fortunate. I loved school. I went through school, had lots of friends, participated in a lot of activities. Life on the farm, you're always busy, and you spend a lot of time outdoors, and all of that. And then I actually went on to university and took my pharmacy. And so it was in the city, which was a new experience for me. And I ended up marrying my high school sweetheart. And and then so I worked as a pharmacist. He was in construction, and we actually moved back to our hometown where we both went to high school to raise our family, which we loved the small town life, and that was really good for our family as well. However, so I kind of went through life thinking nothing bad was ever going to happen to me. That happened to other people and other people's families until it didn't. And unfortunately, I lost my dad when my son was only 2 years old. He died of cancer when he was 57, and in less than 2 years later, my youngest sister was brutally murdered in her home. She was a school teacher. And that really was a wake up call as to bad things can happen to good people. So it was very devastating. And then within not very many years, my mother passed away. She was only 66. And my older sister was diagnosed with multiple sclerosis. And she ended up living many of her years quite disabled and struggling with that, huge mobility issues. And she was a mother of three young children. But she ultimately passed away when she was 53 from
Oh,
breast cancer. So whereas I thought nothing bad could ever happen to us,
mhm.
there were many wake up calls along the way there that sometimes life takes these twists and turns that you just do not expect.
Right.
And that was always in the back of my mind. And that was one of the whys why I really wanted to start my podcast, Older and Bolder, and to spread the message that life in our second half, or past 50 is what I use in my
Yeah.
podcast, is really a gift to be appreciated. So I love what you're doing, Kara, me too, because we do want to realize that living to a certain age is a gift, and we can certainly make the most of each and every day if we choose to.
Hmm. Oh my goodness. So all of that loss you've had, but you have decided, okay, here I am living on longer than these loved ones in my life. And I want to do something with it, something meaningful.
Yeah,
Because
it kind of
yeah.
gives you a feeling that I must still be here for a reason, or a little bit of survivor guilt too. Like, why did these things happen to them and not to me? They did nothing to deserve what happened to them. My sister with MS probably lived a healthier lifestyle than I did. My sister who was murdered was in her own home wrapping Christmas presents when she was brutally attacked and murdered. It just seemed so you just can't even fathom why that would happen and why I was left unscathed. It starts giving you a little bit of a different perspective, and I guess more of gratitude for what all the good things you do have in your life. I was I had a wonderful husband, 3 awesome kids. I had a wonderful career that I loved. I lived in a community that was very supportive, and I loved it. And but these terrible things happened to people in my family, to my loved ones.
Oh my goodness. And yet you go on with just this light about you and serving, and you started your podcast. Well, I'd love to tell us a little bit about your podcast since we're kind of talking about that. So yeah, go ahead and tell us about Older and
Okay.
Bolder. Yes.
Well, I kind of told you about my why, and that was so I thought, well, now that I've retired, I felt like I needed a project. I needed something. And when I came up with the idea, I thought, well, I can try learning something new and doing this. And I really did feel passionate that I was given a gift to live to this age, and that many people don't get that opportunity. And and my husband was very supportive, but once I started delving into it and I hadn't released any episodes yet, he became very ill, and he did ultimately pass away from bowel cancer. So during the time that he was ill, that project was put on the back burner. I was very involved in helping with his care, and we were worried about what was going to happen. But after a few months after his passing, I became, I would say, even more passionate that this is something I want to pursue. And knowing that he passed away when he was 67, it was that if I'm ever going to do this, when? If not, if now, when? So I did. Um, he had passed away in August of 2022. So I launched my first episode in March of 2023. So it's been just a little over a year now. And I interview women who are fearless, fabulous, and 50 plus. And my guests do range in age from just age 50 right up to the oldest one I've interviewed so far has been 93 years of age. And I've really enjoyed it. I've learned so much, and I've certainly got to meet so many interesting individuals.
Oh, I love that. I will say this, you taking on a project like this, after retirement and just moving forward with it after the loss of your husband as well. I mean, there's a lot that goes on behind the scenes with this that nobody realizes. Like you just forged forward with even the technology and just all the things, the communication, the reaching out. There's just so many things that go into running a
Yeah.
podcast that I'm so impressed. You're
Well,
killing it.
I must admit that I do not do my own editing. I did look into finding somebody that could do that. When I looked into the technology, that was a little bit scary for me, and I didn't really think I'd enjoy that part as much. So I do have someone else do my editing, and she does a really good job. She was in broadcasting for many years, and has a communications company now. But
Yeah.
I still did have to learn quite a bit of technology, and even everything. I've learned a lot of new lingo and how to find guests and preparing for it. And that's the part I really enjoy the most. I really enjoy all of that.
It's so wonderful. Okay. Well, thank you for sharing that with us. And we'll definitely put the link to your podcast in the show notes for sure. Well, okay. So just a little bit more. Let's talk a little bit about second half. So I started this, I have my own definition of what second half is. And when I felt like my second half kind of burst open and began, um, I just have that little story where I kind of realized that my grandmothers both lived until they were 94 years old. And I said 94 divided by 2 is 47. And I was like, I'm not even halfway, like I'm halfway there. Let's do this. Again, we don't know what we're going to be gifted as far as years go and time, but I couldn't just be like, okay, this is over. So it has actually given me a burst of energy and made me feel like I needed to do something. Right. So here I am.
Mhm.
So my question for you is, how would you define the beginning of your second half, or when did that begin?
Oh, yeah, and actually with this one, when I think about that, I almost think of my time in thirds. So
Okay.
so if I can flip the question just a little bit and talk about thirds. So, I think for me, the first third was a child growing up and then being married, having my own children. And then when you become an empty nester, that kind of starts the second third.
Okay.
so
Okay.
so because that is a huge change. So while you're raising your children, life revolves around them. You're busy with their activities. Your house is bursting with laughter and noise and and toys and during the teenage years, there lots of friends around and lots of activity and busy, busy, busy. And especially when you live in a small town, once they graduate high school, they not only leave, but all their friends do too. Because in my town, there's no university, there's no college. Most of them will leave to the bigger cities or other places. And so it becomes very quiet. So that's a big transition. So
Yes.
that to me was the second third. And during that second third in my life was when I dove more into my career. I became very involved at the provincial and national level with the Pharmacy Regulatory Authority and worked my way up to president and would be traveling across the country and to the US and was very fortunate to be a part of a lot of those things. So that was kind of my second third. And then I feel that after retirement and so I retired when I was 62 and I just felt it was the right time for me. But now I feel like I'm in my final third. So the third act.
Okay.
But whether you want to put it in halves or thirds, there are big shifts and times to pivot in our lives. And that's what it's kind of unfolded for me.
Yeah. And I like that you say that there are shifts, because sometimes you're in kind of a really down place and you don't see it shifting or way out or whatever it is. And honestly, the next shift, the positive shift, could just be right around the corner.
Mhm.
Wouldn't you agree?
I would, and especially if you, feel like you're just kind of on that hamster wheel going, 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 and you really don't see what's around the corner. But then sometimes too, like I know sometimes just becoming empty nesters right away can be such a shift that a person's thinking, what now? Who am I now that I'm not mothering these kids and having a house full all the time? And so that's a shift. And retirement can be a big shift. And of course, losing loved ones, a huge shift in my life was becoming a
Mhm.
widow.
Mhm.
And but every stage really brings with it new opportunities and a change, and change can be scary, but it can also be really fulfilling and exciting if we let it as well.
Oh, you have such a great outlook. I have a question about empty nester, because I'm just kind of starting to dabble in that. I'm getting into groups that are a little more empty nester, and myself pretty soon here. For you personally, was that kind of a, when they actually moved away, was it a downtime for a moment? I think there's some, the research shows that there is a little bit of a depression. So I'm wondering, curious from your
Yeah,
experience.
it's a little bit of both because at first you think, oh my goodness, now, the house is going to stay cleaner and you're not cooking as much. So there's some of that. And then you realize, oh my goodness, it is so quiet. Or just my husband and I, it's like it used to be such a lively conversation around the dinner table every night as to what went on at school and what went on at hockey or dancing or drama or whatever the case was. Um, there was always lots of activities going on, lots of other people around the house as well with friends, our kids' friends and things. Um, so then it does become a lot quieter. But when you have 3 children, it doesn't happen all at once. One leaves and then the others, and then they come back with their stuff. And I still have snowboards and some of the stuff of my kids, but it changes. So like with any change, there's that little bit of adjustment period and it can seem quiet, but then there's other things too, where if you transition into doing more traveling, which we did, or other things where you don't have to worry about what about the kids if you want to travel or it's and then if you do travel with them and you're footing the bill or you try some of those things, it's on a different level as it transitions from parenting teens and kids to being friends as you're adults together, and you're always still their parent, but the dynamics change somewhat. And another really positive thing that happens is when your kids are 16, usually you as a mother or a father, they don't think you're that smart. But once they turn 25 or so, and especially when they become parents themselves, all of a sudden they really think you are quite smart and they look to you for advice. And a lot of their friends will come up to and point out to you the times they remember them socializing in the basement and spending the night and how much they appreciate it now that they're adults themselves. And you didn't hear nearly as much of that at the time that they were kids socializing in your home.
Mm-hmm. My husband, he says, we're a blended family, and he says, oh, my 2 oldest just thought I was dumb as rocks when they were 16. He was like, I was dumb as rocks. Of course, they don't think that, as adults, they think he's just the best. But yes, why is that when kids are 16, they do that? That's so
Yeah,
funny.
because it's not cool to think your parents are smart and know things. And then after they realize, oh, you really knew all that all along,
Right.
it is quite a shift usually.
Oh, well, okay. So, where do you see yourself going? Okay, I'm going to ask you this question. So you've got all these big plans. You started your project, you started your podcast. We kind of talked a little bit about how you spend your time personally with your family, but let's think about, I don't know, 10-year, 20-year plan here. Where do you see yourself going?
Well, I could
Thoughts on
see
that?
myself doing a lot of the same things I'm still doing. I like volunteering, and I'm not planning on stopping my podcast anytime soon. Maybe I might see it branching off into maybe doing some public speaking or maybe a book, but I haven't really taken giant steps towards that yet. But I'm yeah, I can see myself continuing doing those things, more travel. I have a couple of fairly significant trips planned for this year with some friends. I'm going to Italy next month, and then in the fall, I do have a trip planned to Vietnam and Cambodia and Thailand. So
Look at you. Oh my goodness. Older and bolder. Oh my God.
Uh,
I love it. I
and
love it. There's
what's
a lot of people that are
fascinating?
afraid to travel.
Well, and the thing is, I have some very dear friends who are traveling with me next month to Italy. But I have traveled last year to Costa Rica. I've done that a few times, but I attend Spanish school there. And so I've connected with other people. So I travel there by myself, but it doesn't mean I'm always alone. I stay in my own hotel room,
Yes.
but I'm really connecting with people every day, and I've met some friends that also go there for the same purpose. And now that I know the language somewhat better, I have made some friends that are Costa Ricans themselves, and Spanish is their first language.
Oh my
So,
goodness. I love it.
so that's what I've done. But I do like to experience other cultures and countries, and so I'm fortunate that I'm retired and am able to do that because not everyone does get that opportunity.
Oh my gosh. I love this so much. This is so fun. So, okay. When did you, do you mind me asking, when did you start, really, really focusing on Spanish? Was it years and years and years ago or recently or like
Mm,
speaking
more,
that language?
yeah. More in recent years, it had always been something I liked to learn a few phrases when we'd go on vacation, my husband and I, because we went quite often to Caribbean countries where Spanish was the first language. But in 2018, after I retired, was when I first went to Costa Rica to go to school there. The first time was for a month. And I did that for a couple of years, but then the pandemic hit. So I
Mhm.
wasn't able to travel anywhere for a couple of years. And then I did go again, just for a couple of weeks last year. And, yeah, so that's when I really started getting into it on a more consistent and really diving into it more. And then I did find a tutor that I was able to get together with, um, we tried once a week. She doesn't live in my town. Nobody speaks Spanish in my little town, but
Uh-huh.
she lived an hour and some away, and I would go in and meet with her, and that was that helped me immensely too. But I'm not fluent yet, but I'm getting much better, and I would say I'm conversational.
I'm just so impressed. You just, I mean, just looking at your choices and moving forward and continuing with projects and skills and things and doing things and you're just fearless.
Well, well, thank
Love
you.
that. There's just a lot of people who wouldn't, I don't know. Okay, I'm going to learn a second language or whatever. I don't know how many languages you speak, but I'm going to learn another language now.
Yeah, no, I don't speak any other languages.
You speak Spanish too. I love it. Oh, the how fun. Oh, you're so inspiring. And I hope that this conversation inspires someone to just be like, I'm going to get up and do it, do whatever it
Yeah.
is.
Well,
Oh,
and the thing is, if you try something and you don't like it or it doesn't work out, you just stop doing it. There's not a
mhm.
lot of downside to it. And I think the older we get, Carmi, especially at my age, the less I worry about looking ridiculous or not succeeding, because then you can just stop doing it. But the opportunities that we might be able to have because we try something new can be really enriching. So that's kind of the way I look at it. What have I got to lose and what have I got possibly to gain? And usually the gains can far outweigh the losses. And if I'm sure I sound ridiculous a lot of the times with my Spanish, but
Oh,
it's a growing experience.
yeah. I have one more question. I have these really fun wrap up sentence finishers that I do with my podcast, but I have one more question before we kind of get to those. Um, So a lot of people, and I'm thinking a little bit about empty nester because that's kind of where a lot of my group is. So what do your kids think about you? So I think so we raise our kids and so much time goes into raising our kids, then empty nester, then this kind of loss. You're like, oh, now what do I do? My kids aren't here anymore. It's a little bit of, do you feel like your children are excited and proud of you when you take on these other interests and these other things. I mean, tell me a little bit about your experience with your own
Yeah.
children and that.
Well, I think for the most part they are. That's that's what they tell me. Um,
Okay. Yes.
I because my podcast is called Older and Bolder, I think some other people listen a lot more to it than they do.
Right.
You
And
know?
that's okay. I think that's okay too. Me too. My kids don't listen to mine, but yeah.
Yeah. And yeah, I think one thing I think they're proud of me, or they're happy to see that I have been able to um move forward and not lean on them for everything since becoming a widow too, because that is a big change, and they grieve the loss of their father as well. So I think they appreciate my independence and trying to figure things out for myself. um but I'm really appreciative for all of them, because that's what keeps you going too. And being a grandma is great too. That gives you lots to look forward to. And when they are so excited to see you at their hockey games, or all of the functions, they love to come to my property at the lake and spend summers, and that really warms your heart, and that keeps you going too, because you do have lots to look forward to then.
Lovely. So, so lovely. Thank you for sharing. Well, okay. I have some sentence finishers that are kind of my brand's adieu. So I'd love
Okay.
for you to finish.
I'm on the hot seat.
I know. Yeah, let's go. Okay, so I'm going to read the sentence and you'll just finish it with whatever comes to your mind. How's that?
Okay.
Okay. The world needs to realize that those in their second half are.
Valuable.
I love it. Well, and sometimes the world hasn't made those in their second half feel like they're valuable. So
Yeah.
I think that's
Yeah.
great.
No, that's
Okay, here we go. Sentence number 2. I'd like to tell everyone in their first half to.
don't worry so much about the judgment of others.
Mhm. Very, very nice. And hands down, in my second half, I will.
Try to make a difference in the lives of others.
Oh, I love that. Well, this has been so wonderful. I know my podcast is kind of short and sweet, just the way that the model is set up, but I have had such a nice time talking to you. You've given us so many good nuggets to think about. I'm hoping, I always just say, I hope one person listens to this conversation and they feel it or inspired or it lifted them. I'm sure more than one will hear it and all of that. But I just always think if just I can just reach one.
Mm-hmm.
So I appreciate your time here today and you sharing all of your joy and just everything that you shared. I appreciate you.
Well, I've had so much fun. Thank you so much for having me on, Carmi. And I love what you're doing and the message you're spreading with your podcast as well. So I'm so glad we connected.
All right. Well, thank you. Okay. Well, everyone, live boldly, love Carrie and Debbie. Hey there. We're super excited to announce the release of our interactive journal. It's on Amazon. It's called My Second Half Chronicles Journal. You can find it if you just type that onto Amazon. It comes with several pages of discovery exercises, with a bunch of journal prompts, 200 writing pages. So the owner can go through a series of exercises. They can write about their second half. They can kind of rediscover themselves, find their inner child. And it's an amazing gift book for someone who might have everything, and they're living in their second half. So check it out on Amazon. Thanks. Love you. Thank you so much for listening today. Please show some love to all of us at Second Half Chronicles by giving us a follow or subscribing, and please share an episode with a friend. It would mean the world. Until next time, live boldly, love Caramy.